أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to this week's episode of the Islamic Take. This week we're going to be discussing Sirul Khilafah, which is the MKA Book of the Year, directly translated in English as the Reality of Khalifah. This book was written in 1894 by the Promised Messiah and Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, in 1894. This book touches upon the mystery of Khilafah as a means of establishing Muslim unity and security under one Khalifa. This book establishes this by using the example of Hazrat Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu, who was the first Khalifa after the demise of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, I don't want to give too much away, but before I start, I want to encourage all Khudan that this is a live show, so please send us your comments and send us your questions in the comment section, and we'll do our best to answer these in today's show. Now, with me today, we have respected Numan Hadi Sahib, who is a missionary serving in the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and is a life devotee, and he's also serving as Muhtarim Taaleem for Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya UK. Assalamu alaikum, Numan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah for having me.
No, nice to have you on the show today. So, Sirul Khilafah, this is a book written by the Promised Messiah in 1894. Now, this is the MK Book of the Year. So, I was just wondering before the show started, how are MK books chosen? What's the process? And how do we get Khudam to get involved with them?
I think the second part of the question is more difficult to answer than the first. How do we get people to read? But the MKA book for the year is chosen based on the theme. And based on that, we collect a few examples of books. They are usually the books of the Promised Messiah alayhi salam or the Khilafah. And we present them to Hazrat Amirul Mu'mineen. And then Hazur approves one to be read by Khudam. And the whole idea is that Khudam properly familiarize themselves with that book. They read it, they understand it. And look, the Promised Messiah's writings, I don't know if you ever read them, but they are life-changing.
Yeah,
they will draw you in and they will keep you engaged, and you will feel that someone is as if someone is doing your tarbiyat. And you realize it's this book that you're carrying around. It's this book that you're reading, and it's literally like having a conversation with the Promised Messiah alayhi salam as well, especially if it's related to a subject that you're trying to research, you're trying to find an answer to something. It's a great way for young Khuddam who are stepping out into the world, who have so many questions on their mind with regards to Islam, to explore what Islam is. There's so much in there, and the Prophet Messiah has written on everything. There isn't a single topic that he hasn't covered. So today we are going to be talking about obviously the reality of Khilafah. Sirul Khilafah is the original name of the book in Arabic, and again we presented a few books at the start of the Khudam, and this was the one that was approved. So we do encourage Khudam to definitely, you can get this on Islam, you can buy this at your local bookshop as well, to please get a hold of a copy. It's only 200 pages, it's not a lot, it's not a hugely long
So just to
read.
confirm, these books are approved before they're chosen?
Yes, they are. So we go through which books will cover the topic of the year. A short list is then presented to Huzur, and then it is up to Hazrat Amirul Mu'mineen to approve it. Or if Huzur gives an instruction or command of his own to read this book, then that automatically becomes the book of the year. But we've had amazing books. No, you cannot say one year the book wasn't every single time, because this is the literature of the Jamaat, it's the literature of the Promised Messiah. It's always going to be amazing.
All right, so with this book, it's written in 1894, very long time ago. What is the historical context of when this book was published? What was the world like at the time, and what was the impact of this on the world? Maybe even particularly the Arab world, since it is written in Arabic.
So when we think about 1894, or when we think about the 19th century, we imagine it to be a black and white world, right? It wasn't. It was becoming a fastly moving modern world. Ships were had long, in fact, been used as a means of transport, and I'm talking about mechanical ships, not the wooden sail ships. You had mass means of communication, now well in use. So this was a time when the world was rapidly becoming more and more modern and becoming technologically advanced. And in that atmosphere, Allah the Almighty sent a prophet. And the first book that was written and published was in 1880. And this is basically, you could kind of say, the halfway point in the ministry of the promised Messiah alayhi salam. Because 1880 is when the first book called Braheen Ahmadiyya went out. 1908 is when the promised Messiah alayhi salam passed away. So 1894 is kind of like roughly the halfway point. And the promised Messiah wrote a few Arabic books together. He had turned his attention towards preaching and doing tabligh in Mecca, in the Arab world, and people were accepting. People were writing to the promised Messiah alayhi salam from places like Mecca, Medina, the nobility of those areas, and was saying that, literally were writing in their letters, and this is on record, that Hazur, whenever we go and speak to anyone about your claim, people become extremely excited and they are eager to see you in Mecca. So when the promised Messiah ﷺ makes the claim that the entire world has received my message, it's not an exaggeration. It is the case that in one of the Arabic books of the promised Messiah ﷺ, the book it's not this one, but the book starts off by saying literally that I received a letter in which a resident from Alexandria in Egypt said that the entire city has accepted you as the Messiah. Obviously, this at that time didn't mean that they had come and done bad, but it meant that they accepted the message of the promised Messiah, that yes, Jesus ﷺ has passed away. In his place, a Mahdi from this Ummah will be born. And this was the impact of books like this, talking about Sirrul Khilafah. This is exactly the same case as well. The Arabic in this is absolutely amazing.
So forgive me if I'm wrong as well, but was there specific Muslim individuals at the time who were particularly influential who actually accepted Ahmadiyya perhaps after this?
Numerous Shia
really?
accepted the promised Messiah's message, as well as Sunnis, because you have to remember the Sunni Shia split has been something that's been kind of there since the early days of Islam, immediately after the time of the Khilafat Rashida. And unfortunately, this is a split that has torn Islam down the middle, because you have a significant number of Muslims who are Shias, and on the other side, you have a significant who are Sunnis. And unfortunately, there are those groups who, try to abuse the companions, or who remember the companions in a manner which is not befitting of their station. So this book was there, and it was written as the Prophet Messiah wrote this as the Hakam and Adl, because there is a hadith of the Holy Prophet ﷺ that when the Messiah will appear, he will be the Hakam and he will be the Adl, meaning he will be the arbitrator. All of the disputes within the Muslim Ummah that will occur during the time of the promised Messiah, he will resolve them. And the Sunni Shia dispute perhaps is one of the largest. So people were writing to him and were saying to him, did Hazrat Ali, was it actually, the certain view holds that Hazrat Ali, God forbid, wanted Khilafat? We don't believe that.
So that's why some Muslims...
And some Muslims were writing to the promised Messiah asking for the reality. When this happened, that when the promised Messiah received those letters, he prayed, and then he was guided by Allah to write a book. And such was the effect of Sirrul Khilafah. This book here, such was the effect of this book here, that a really prominent Shia scholar by the name of Ubaidullah Bismil, Maulana Ubaidullah Bismil, who has written a book on who wrote a book on Hazrat Ali as well, Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that was very well quoted. I think the name of the book is Arjahul Matalib, if I'm not mistaken. He was a Shia scholar. He read the Promised Messiah's book.
He read this book.
He read this book. He read the Reality of Khalifah, Sirrul Khilafah in Arabic. That night he saw a dream in which he saw Hazrat Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu saying something positive about the Promised Messiah.
So Hazrat Imam Hussein was the grandson of Holy Prophet.
So Hazrat Imam Hussein was the grandson of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was martyred at Karbala.
And he's a particular, quite an important person.
He's
in
a very
Shia
important person in
Islam.
Shia history, because the Shias consider him as one of the Imams,
Ah, I see.
as one of the pioneer Imams. So the Shia scholar saw Hazrat Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu in his dream.
Oh, really?
And that's when he knew the
Yeah.
promised Messiah alayhi salam has been sent by Allah.
Oh, wow.
So this book, it's been translated from Arabic to English. It's available in Urdu as well. I could not encourage more the reading of the books of the Prophet. I
Yeah.
think those people who know me know that reading the books of the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam is the person who's read them and the person who hasn't read them. There is a day and night
You
difference.
just feel like you've reached new spiritual peaks. You feel like you're in another world.
You feel yourself changing. You, like I said, you feel your own tarbiyat being conducted, and yeah, it's amazing the effect that these words have.
So this book, it was written in Arabic. A lot of misconceptions and allegations come from anti-Ahmadis that the promised Messiah, God forbid, had scribes writing for him in Arabic. His Arabic was not to a good standard. Lots of mistakes in his Arabic. From this, does this actually prove them right or wrong?
So it's interesting that you mentioned this, because the very first chapter in this book, which is just a page long, is actually the promised Messiah alayhi salam talking about what constitutes a mistake. So if you're writing an essay and you've misspelt a word, but you've spelt it correctly everywhere else, that's not a mistake. But if it's the case that you continuously make an error, then that is counted as a mistake. And the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam states that if an error appears at one juncture, yet that same word is used 20, 30 or 50 times in other places, then it's something that should be considered as clerical inaccuracy, as opposed to the author not being able to write that word properly. And this is an allegation that instilled to this day. It's leveled against the writings of the promised Messiah alayhi salam, unfortunately, and it's just a silly allegation. It's without looking at the beauty of the words and the imagery that the promised Messiah alayhi salam has used. It's just a way of trying to degrade his writing. The promised Messiah's Arabic was par excellence. You could not match it. It was, and that's why this book, even Sirul Khilafah, there's a monetary reward attached to it. That the Prophet ﷺ says that whoever in a certain number of days can write a book that's similar to this, I will give him a reward of X number of rupees.
And that nobody responded to that challenge at all. And I think it speaks for itself that we have Arab speakers in our own Jamaat who have translated this book, and there's absolutely no allegations from them at all.
Absolutely.
So I want to just move forward about, why do some believe in a different Khilafah after the Holy Prophet? We touched upon it briefly, but is there any sort of historical context at all? So
to shorten a really long piece of history and a really complex piece of history, we should remember that Hazrat Muslim radiallahu ta'ala anhu delivered a speech on this in Lahore, and that was published in the form of a well-known book in Anwarul Uloom called Islamic Khilafat ka Aghaaz, which has been translated into English as The Outset of Dissension in Islam, in which Hazrat Muslim discusses how it led to a situation where Hazrat Usman was martyred, Hazrat Umar was martyred, and finally Hazrat Ali. In what conditions did he undertake, or was he forced to pick up the heavy mantle, burdensome mantle of Khilafat? And that, if the reader wishes to, it's very easy to understand, wishes to learn further about that, then I would strongly suggest that that book is consulted. But primarily, once Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, the Rabi Rahmullah, Hazrat Amirul Mu'mineen, the fourth Khalifa, he said, Innamal a'malu binniyat. He said that at that time, we see great companions, great personalities, like the likes of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the likes of other, major people around the Holy Prophet who were companions. We see them do certain things which we do not have a right to judge as to whether that was correct or not. Only a Khalifa of Allah can judge that, or Allah the Almighty Himself will be able to make a decision. on that. And then he says, this is something that their own intentions, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, will inform that what they done, whether it was for the sake of Allah, or whether it was whether it was to safeguard Islam, or whether it was for other reasons. And with this principle in mind, we can only narrate history. Yes, there were certain mistakes that were made. The fact of the matter is that the office of the Khalifa is the office of the Khalifa. You cannot rebel against the Khalifa, especially if the Khalifa is in government at that time. So those people who opposed Hazrat Ali, they were wrong. The Khalifa Waqt of the time was Hazrat Ali. But at the same time, as Hazrat Khalifa Masih Rabi Rahmullah explained, that the conditions of that time, owing to external forces who had become Muslim, or people who had become Muslims to cause trouble in Islam, because of their machinations, because of their scheming, this was all happening. So in a way, there was you can say, a mutiny that was brewing, and it was deliberately brewed that led to the martyrdom. It's not a small matter, the martyrdom of Hazrat Uthman, Hazrat Umar, and Hazrat Ali as well, and then Hazrat Imam Hassan and Hussein after that as well. So Hazrat Masih Maud, the promised Messiah alayhi salam, in Sirul Khilafah has explained that do not attribute blame to Hazrat Abu Bakr. Do not attribute blame to Hazrat Umar. Do not attribute blame to Hazrat Ali. These were the righteous, God-fearing servants of Allah. And there's entire chapters on the merits of Hazrat Abu Bakr. So if we go to, I think it's around page 100, there are sections in which the promised Messiah ﷺ has explained the X quality of Hazrat Abu Bakr, X quality of Hazrat Abu Bakr, X quality of Hazrat Abu Bakr, because unfortunately some people who call themselves Muslim, they really harbor enmity against the first two Shaykhain, so Hazrat Abu Bakr and Hazrat Umar. And the promised Messiah ﷺ has explained that this is something that a true Muslim can never hold in his heart. He can never hold hatred in his heart for the Khulafa.
Hazrat Abu Bakr was a very loved personage of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. He was the person who Holy Prophet ﷺ asked to stay with him on the night when they were traveling to Medina.
Of course, and there's so many things like that. He was, the Promised Messiah writes that the same mercy descended on him that descended on the Holy Prophet ﷺ. These are massive, these are big words to say. So to say that Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu was, God forbid, unjust is just not true. And yes, there are, further there's historical there's references, there's stories that certain things happened due to which the supporters of certain khulafa say this was wrong. Whatever the case was, we do not believe that Hazrat Abu Bakr was anything less than a saint. He's been called the second Adam for Islam. So how can it be the case that Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu wasn't a true leader?
Just so it's easier for listeners, I do want to urge that these books, they are available on alislam.org, right? So that is, the books that you've mentioned is Sirul Khilafah and also The Outset of Dissension in Islam. So both these books are available on alislam.org. They are free and you can view them online. I also want to just urge that this is a live show and we are going to take comments just in a bit. But before that, I do want to just touch on one thing. So am I right in saying that Khilafat is promised in the Quran, is promised by Allah, and that is the Mahdi also included in this, that God promises successors? Is the Mahdi also included in that?
So the belief of the Jamaat is exactly in line with the belief of the Holy Prophet ﷺ and the companions. In the Holy Quran, Allah the Almighty has promised Khilafat. And He has promised Khilafat in the well-known verse, Ayat Istikhlaf. Which literally begins with Wa'ad Allah, meaning Allah has promised. And the belief of the Ahmadi Muslim Jamaat is that whenever there's prophethood, it is followed by Khilafat. And this is not something new. This is something that's been taking place since there was prophethood.
Not just law-bearing prophets, also non-law-bearing prophets.
Whenever there is prophethood, it is followed by Khilafat. And when it comes to the promise of Khilafat, so these days, there are so many Muslims, because of what's happening in Israel and Palestine, because of what the Muslim world in general is facing, are calling for the appearance of a Khalifa, are saying that we need to unite behind a Khalifa. Yes, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat has been saying this since the dawn of Khilafat over 100 years ago. But the prerequisite to Khilafat is prophethood. That's why in order for there to be Khilafat, people will have to accept that there has to be prophet. And who's that prophet? We say it's the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wassalam. And after the promised Messiah alayhi salam, then began the system of Khilafat that the fruits of which we are enjoying for the past 100 years. Lekin, when it comes to those people, yes, people are desperate. Muslims are desperate, and we see this on social media that so many are saying that if Islam was united under a single Khalifa. But the fact of the matter is, it can't just be anyone. Khilafat, the Khalifa work is chosen by Allah Ta'ala. And that's the point that the promised Messiah alayhi salam makes as well, that Khilafat is not worldly kingship. He is a person who is garbed in the mantle of Khilafat, who Allah chooses to be garbed in the mantle of Khilafat. Therefore, that such person is special. And such a special person is the one who can lead and guide the Ummah. Not anyone with just worldly tendencies.
100%. That is the establishment, that will cause the establishment of Muslim unity. And in this book, the promised Messiah touches upon this, that there will be Muslim unity established in the world if the Muslim world just accept the Khalifa.
I think obviously the entire message of the promised Messiah needs to be accepted. But just on, like we saw the effect of this book, this is the teaching of the Jamaat. This is the teaching that the promised Messiah gave. This is the teaching that we go with. And the promised Messiah ﷺ is written so beautifully about Hazrat Ali. And in fact, there's a chapter titled The Will. There's a chapter titled, we obviously know The Will because there's a book called Al-Wasiyah, The Will, but there's a chapter called The Will, one page only, meaning it's only 2 paragraphs. And in there, the promised Messiah ﷺ simply says, O Shias, do not say anything negative about Hazrat Abu Bakr and Hazrat Umar, because then their followers will say something negative about Hazrat Ali. And under the principle that do not curse someone else's father, because then he will curse your father in return, and it will be as if you have become the means of your own father getting cursed. Under the same principle, do not utter abuse against any of the Khulafa. What a beautiful principle this is, that yes, if there's a belief, if there's a question, then that can be discussed under scholarly debate. But when it falls to abusing the righteous servant, those people who in the Holy Quran it mentions 2 of them, the Holy Prophet has Abu Bakr Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu together in the cave. Like that was so close. How can such a person who was so close to the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam not be upon the true path? So this is a really beautiful book in which the Promised Messiah alayhi salam has addressed both Sunnis and Shias as well, and admonished both of them to not go down a path of enmity. And this is what it means to be the Hakam and the other.
It's not an incredibly long book. It spans around 200 pages, which isn't difficult to cover in the space of a year because it is the MKA Book of the Year. We have got some questions coming in, so I might turn to the second segment unless you have anything else to add, but I might turn to the second segment of the show. So I do want to ask a question. One question that we've had come in is that what led the Muslim Ummah into civil war and ultimately led to the martyrdom of the rightly guided caliphs?
So again, really appreciate the question. I think it's an important question, and there's definitely some appetite to learn. Read Islamic Khilafat Ka Aghaaz, the outset of dissension in Islam. It's a really, really wonderful book. But what Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu has said is that it was those people who had converted to Islam but who weren't proper Muslims, who had hidden desires to cause damage to Islam. It was those people that went here, would whisper things against one companion to this companion, then would go there and then would say, they're getting an army ready, and then they would go back and say their army's already left, they're conspiring to do this. So it was a deliberate policy of divide.
There's plotting going on in the
Yeah,
background.
it was plotting going on, and this wasn't the companions. This was those people who had converted to Islam on the outside, but inside their actual aim was to take government control themselves, to somehow obtain control over the levers of statecraft, was also to cause damage to the Muslim unity. And it was these people that, when Hazrat, in the battle of one of the battles that Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu fought with Hazrat on the other side of Hazrat Aisha, when Hazrat Ali, Hazrat Aisha during the wall came close and they were speaking, that's when they realized that they had been sold lies, that there was one particular group of people who had been giving them incorrect intelligence. And that's when they both departed the battlefield, and they were sorry that they had to leave and fight and kill their fellow Muslims. And this was all the cause of those people who weren't proper Muslims, who were there as munafiqeen. It was basically the munafiqeen who had, the hypocrites who had caused so much of this fighting. And this is something that is clearly explained in Islamic Khilafat ka Aghaaz, and there's another book called Khilafat Ali ke, if I'm not mistaken, it's called Khilafat Ali ke Waqiyat, and that's another speech. So I would strongly recommend to read those on Al-Islam.
It's quite unfortunate to hear these accounts and these this all happened so soon after the Holy Prophet ﷺ's time. The Promised Messiah as well, he was, I think one time there's also a narration that he was once narrating this incident to his children, and it was so difficult for him to narrate this incident as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was in line with the prophecy of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, that he said that after me this will happen, and it will happen for this long, and then that will happen, and that will stay for this long. So it was under prophecy. But again, it is, unfortunate that the munafiqeen, again, they were able to do this damage to Muslims. And because Islam had expanded, Hazrat Muslim radiallahu ta'ala anhu says that Islam had expanded so quickly that it was not possible anymore to do the tarbiyat of so many people so quickly. And that's where the trouble came in, because that meant the munafiqeen could easily convince people to, to, instead of being firm, standing firm on the teachings of Islam, they were those that were causing harm. And the Holy Prophet ﷺ had spoken about this. The Holy Prophet ﷺ had said that this will happen, and then a certain kind of kingship or monarchy shall appear. And when that happens, it will be better if you stay away from everything. And it was under this prophecy that certain companions kept aloof of political affairs, and they did not intermingle with any society, because they recognized that this is that time. So this is unfortunate what happened, but the Promised Messiah ﷺ has saved us from these massive pitfalls, and explained that you can't say to Hazrat Ali, someone like Hazrat Ali, who is the lion of Allah, that he made a mistake, or God forbid he wanted Khilafah. That's not true. Similarly to Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Usman, these were righteous, fearing servants of Allah. And this is something that Hazur has also discussed in his recent Friday sermons as well.
Yeah, Jazakallah for touching upon that. I'll just answer perhaps one more question before we bring this program and this segment to a close. One question that we've been asked is that, fine, this has been happening. This might have been a long time ago, but now in this time of the Promised Messiah, where Islam should be resolved under one banner, in Muslim unity, how can Muslims resolve their internal conflicts and become a united Ummah? We see what's happening with Israel and Palestine completely shows that we're not a united Ummah right now.
I would say to accept the Promised Messiah ﷺ, and when it comes to the Promised Messiah ﷺ, pray to Allah Ta'ala. This is something that the Promised Messiah ﷺ himself used to say. He used to say, if you're not convinced by my arguments, pray to Allah, do istikhara, that Allah Ta'ala, if this man is truthful, tell me. And Allah Ta'ala will show you a sign. Allah Ta'ala will incline your heart towards the Messiah. We hear so many stories narrated by Hazur every year that people have dreams and then they accept the Promised Messiah ﷺ. So this is the best way to understand and to recognize the truth of Jamaat-e Ahmadiyya. to recognize the truth of the promised Messiah, and after that, naturally, will follow Khilafat, because Khilafat is a continuation of the bounties of prophethood. So, for the entire Muslim world today, if they do not agree with the promised Messiah, pray to Allah Ta'ala in nawaz that Allah Ta'ala, if this is a true man, show us the path to him. And Allah Ta'ala will show them how to basically become an Ahmadi. Right? Allah Ta'ala will remove their misgivings from their hearts. And once they're part of the Jamaat, they will see, once you become a member of the Jamaat, you automatically then realize the gift, the favor, the divine reward, the divine grace that is Khilafah. And whoever is an Ahmadi, once you've seen the beauty of it, you cannot go back to anything else, because this is the truth. This is how Khilafah is supposed to be, and we're receiving the bounties of Khilafah. And
we're not just saying this. All the promised Messiah has come in line with the prophecies of the Holy Prophet. This is the time that was foretold 1400 years ago.
Absolutely, and that's why I think this book is so amazing to read, in that there are so many people from, so many of our Shia brothers who ask questions regards to Imam Ghaib and the Shia Imams, and when we present our teaching on this, so many of them have actually then thought about this, reflected about this, had dreams, seen dreams, and then come and accepted the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam. So I think the responsibility most certainly falls on the shoulders of Khudam to read the book of the year. And you know, in today's program, we haven't even touched upon 10% of it. Once you read it, you will understand how beautifully written the promised Messiah alayhi salam's words are. I mean, the promised Messiah there's a hadith in which the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I'll end on this, that he said that when the Messiah will appear, he will give out treasures, but no one will take them from him. And how sad it is that the opponents obviously don't take them from him because they don't believe him to be a Muslim. But look at how sad will it be that if our own Ahmadi youth do not partake on treasures that they have at the click of a few buttons, and they can better their lives because of it.
Jazakallah for giving your time and giving such an in-depth discussion for this book. I do want to urge all Khudam that this book is the MKA book of the year, The Reality of Khalifah, written by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah, and Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. Please continue to read this book. This book has been confirmed and approved by Hazur Muslim Aziz for this year. And it's not a long book. Throughout the year, if you spend about 10 pages, maybe a week, it will take you only 20 weeks to complete. It's not a long book. And we've discussed today that it will change your life. It will help you understand the Muslim unity today is established through one Khalifa. Jazakallah all for tuning in. I know we've had a lot of questions and comments from the past few episodes, and we will continue to answer these in future shows and future publications. Jazakallah all for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.